Okay, you're good to go, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Good evening, members of the public, staff, and council. Welcome to the Monday, November 1st Committee of Adjustment meeting. Can I get someone to call the meeting to order? Moved by Sam Actonel, second by Martin Lang. All those in favor? Meeting is called to order. Approval of the agenda. I get a mover and a seconder. Moved by Martin Lang, second by Sam Actonel. All those in favor of the approval of the agenda? Agenda is approved. Thank you. I assume everybody had a chance to review the minutes of our October 4th meeting. Can I get someone to move and second the approval? Moved by Sam Actonel, second by Martin Lang. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we'll move on to item A 24-21. Michelle Fontaine, Miss Haley.
Joanne's on mute.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Good evening,
problem.
everyone. Can you see my presentation?
Yep.
Great.
Having a hard time hearing you.
Okay, I'll speak up. So good evening, everyone. For those of you who are attending the meeting this evening, if you are participating by Zoom or by phone, you will be permitted to speak to the respective application following my presentation. Prior to speaking, please state your name and address for the record. And if you wish to make comments, please use the raise hand function and the chair will call on you. If you have registered to participate in the meeting by phone to speak to the application, you will be asked if you would like to comment on the application after the presentation. I'm now going to read required wording under the Ontario Planning Act for the public meeting this evening. This is a hearing under Section 44 of the Ontario Planning Act. Any person may attend this hearing and/or make written or verbal representation either in support of or in opposition to the proposed minor variance. If a person or public body does not make oral or written submissions at this hearing before the minor variance is decided upon, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the minor variance of the Committee of Adjustment to the Ontario Land Tribunal, also known as OLT. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a hearing or make written submissions to the Committee of Adjustment or the Township of South Glengarry before the minor variance is decided upon, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the OLT unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. So we only have one application on our agenda this evening. This application is known as A2421. This property is located at part of Lot 38, Registered Plan number 142 in the geographic township of Charlottenburg, now in South Glengarry, and it's addressed as 18308 Kilkenny Crescent, 6684, 6682, and 6680 Lawrence Street in the settlement area of Glenwalter. This is the location of the subject property. You can see Kilkenny Street is here, and then it fronts onto Lawrence Street. And the subject property contains a fourplex that was constructed in 2007, and the property is serviced by municipal water and wastewater. I have a few photos for you here. This is kind of a side front view of the property. So you can see the exterior side yard setback here, and then the four doors in the front of the building. And then this is a view of the rear yard setback that's existing. I also have a couple more close-ups of the rear yard from each end. So you can see there's a platform as people walk out of their patio door, and then the fence along the property line is right here. So the property owner has filed a severance application to sever this property. And in order to support the application, I requested a building location survey to be submitted to ensure that the proposed severance conformed to the zoning bylaw. When receiving the survey, it revealed that the rear yard and exterior side yard setbacks could not be met. So the purpose of the application this evening, in hopes to bring the property into conformity with the bylaw, is to reduce the rear yard setback from 6 meters to 2.85 meters, and to reduce the exterior side yard setback from 6 meters to 5.42 meters. This is a site plan that was submitted with the application. It was completed by an Ontario land surveyor. And you can see that I've highlighted the areas where the setbacks don't comply, and the 2.85 would be the shortest setback at the rear. And then the 5.42 is on the exterior yard along Kilkenny. And the property is designated residential district. It's located in the urban settlement area of Glen Walter. It does conform to the general intent of the official plan. And the property is zoned residential 2, and it does conform to the general intent of the zoning bylaw. This application was circulated to applicable municipal staff. We recognize that the structure cannot meet setbacks. However, the permit was issued in 2007. It's something that just we became aware of simply because of the idea to sever the property. And in terms of public consultation, to date, I've received one phone call from an abutting property owner expressing concerns on how close the structure is to the rear property line. That's all I have for you now, Mr. Chair, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. And I do believe the applicant is on this evening, if you have any questions for the applicant.
Thank you very much, Ms. Haley. I do have a question. How did this get built in the R2 zoning? Because it is not permitted,
Well,
as far as I know.
You're right, and that's an interesting question. So it was built in 2007, as I mentioned. Our current bylaw is 2009, so it was built under Charlottenburg's bylaw. So you know
Okay.
what that tells me? That tells me that when we did the new bylaw, we didn't pick up that this property was actually 4 units. When you attend to the site, it looks like 2 semis, but they're actually 4 units on one site. So I think it was just something that wasn't picked up at the time of redoing the bylaw. So what that means is this means that it would be legal, but non-conforming because it predates the 2009 bylaw that we're currently using.
But once we grant the severance, if it goes through, it's into conformity again because it's 2 separate pieces of property.
That is correct. Yes.
Okay, thank you. I just was curious about that. Are there any questions of the committee members? Seeing none, motion, let me just see here if I can, somebody
We
has.
do
their hand up.
have, someone has their hand up, yes.
Yeah, I do see that. And Desjardins, I see her, she has her hand up. So I'll allow her to speak.
Okay.
Hello,
And hi,
would you please state your name and your address for the committee, please?
Anne Desjardins, 18310 Kilkenny Crescent.
Okay,
The property in question abuts my yard.
okay,
Okay, so the issue I have is the fact that he has no signed permits for the building, and his building is not 6 meters away from my fence, so that whenever I come out into my backyard, the people that live in the monstrosity that is otherwise known as the fourplex are practically in my backyard. Their deck comes directly to my fence. They hang stuff onto my fence. I can't even repair my fence without having to go into without them questioning what I'm doing, because they think it's part of their yard. So how can this even be allowed to continue? He built it. He didn't have the correct permits. So
do you have the facts about that, Ms. Desjardins? I mean, that's innuendo. I mean,
I have this, sorry, excuse me. This is a conversation that I had with the person from your office at the township. I was told that the permits were not signed.
do you have a date and you have that in writing?
I don't have it in writing. It was a conversation. It was done, I believe it was Thursday, October 28th. And it was the date that I signed up for this meeting.
Okay,
I could speak to that, Mr. Deputy or
Okay.
Mr. Chair. And I did speak with Mr. Jardine on Thursday of last week. And I have pulled the building permit and reviewed it. A building permit was issued for the parcel of property. The building permit, in my opinion, was issued in error because it didn't meet the setbacks at that time. And that's something that I cannot change. We have to recognize that. We have to admit that. But and what should have happened at the time when the building permit was applied for, it should have met the rear yard setback. And if it didn't, then a minor variance should have been requested prior to construction. However,
Correct.
this is something that I've only learned recently with this application being filed and then having pulled the building permit. And our inspector also issued a final on that permit in 2009 as well.
So there was a
um,
final inspection done.
Correct. And that
Okay.
was, it would have been overlooked at that time by the chief building official.
So, Ms. Haley, today, when somebody applies for a permit like this, at the time, we weren't required, we require building location surveys now, correct?
We do. So at that time in 2007, we required a site plan. The site plan was submitted. The site plan showed that they could meet the exterior side yard, but they couldn't meet the rear yard. And that's why I know it was overlooked because that was shown right in the application. Today, what happens is we need a site plan that demonstrates that you can meet all the setbacks. If the setbacks are really close in today's permit process, let's say the setback comes in right at 6 meters, at the foundation stage, we ask for a surveyor to go out and verify the location before they're able to proceed with completing the construction to ensure that they are meeting the setback. But that's been a change that came into effect in 2014.
Okay. So right now, what is the setback request? What is the relief again? Would you mind stating those?
6
It's from
meters
6
to 2.85 meters for the rear yard.
So, I mean, how do you, what do we do here? I mean, the only thing different is we're adding a line between the two properties versus what's already existing, correct?
So if a severance wasn't being applied for, I wouldn't have asked for the building location survey. We would not have known at the office that it didn't conform. It doesn't make it right. It doesn't make the situation any better, but it's been existing since 2007 or since construction was completed, I should say.
Ms. Haley, I'll go to you in a second, Councillor Lang. Ms. Haley, has there been any that you're aware of? Has bylaw been called to the property for nuisance and noise and stuff?
I'm not aware of that, and our current records are electronic, but I don't know if we would have received calls years ago, but recently we've not had calls since we've been tracking electronically.
Did you have any other comments or questions, Mr. Jardine?
So there are no permits. And basically, I have no recourse. There is nothing that can be done. I've had to repair my fence 3 times, but that doesn't seem to make any difference because I've not called the bylaw officer or anything or complained about my neighbors because I am not that kind of person. So how does something like this happen and then get, like, it's hard for me not to say swept under the rug because all that I'm hearing is it was overlooked. It was overlooked. It was overlooked. Meanwhile, it's very painfully obvious that the building is too close to my yard.
I guess so. So there, you've stated that there is no permits. Ms. Haley stated that there was a permit applied for and a final inspection was done. So there was a permit applied for, issued, and so the homeowner did do that part of the process. Staff erred in the location of the building. That is something that did happen. But I mean, like, we haven't heard any issues with this property since it was built in 2007. So it's tough for us to go back now and stop the seller from, or the proponent here for subdividing when it meets all of the provincial policy and all of the other rules except for that rear yard setback. Go ahead, Ms. Desjardins, and then Councillor Lang, I do apologize. You did have your hand up.
Just a quick question. So when he raised the other building that was there and he started his foundation pour and he was pounding the rocks in, that's when I should have made my complaint back in 2007? Or would it have been considered at that time that it was too late as well?
I can't speak to that in the past, but that would have been the time to, yeah, I'll let you answer that, Ms. Haley, please.
So what would have happened is if it was brought to our attention and if the chief building official realized that the proposed dwelling wasn't meeting the applicable setbacks, the work would have had to have stopped and this process would have been required to go through. Anytime someone can't meet the setbacks, the Ontario Planning Act allows for individuals to apply for a minor variance to seek relief or seek approval to reduce their setbacks. So this would have happened then.
Okay. For a final comment, go ahead, Ms. Desjardins.
So the onus is on the neighboring properties to make sure that the home builder is following up with all their paperwork and stuff like that. Is that what you're telling me? I just want to be clear.
So Ms. Haley stated it at the earlier that there was a mistake by staff at the outset of this process back in 2007, which is a long time ago. So
Yeah.
We erred. Our staff erred at that time. That is a reality.
But you're also telling me that the onus was on me. I should have made a comment at that time. Okay, never mind.
If you had concern, Mrs. Desjardins, I would say that if you had concerns about the proximity of the construction, yeah, a phone call, sometimes goes a long way, but again, we erred. That's factual.
All right. So there are minutes to this meeting, right? Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. This building's been existing since 2007, so I'm going to support this. I understand the neighbor has questions and is, I don't know if they're upset by how close the building is, but we can't physically move the building very easily. I think it would be too extreme. There was things done in the past that, don't conform to all of the standards that we're putting in place these days. And we can't go and demolish buildings, I don't think, when it's minor in nature. So, and I don't know which place Ms. Desjardins lives in, but I mean, if you look at the pictures on Google Earth of the house to the south of this building, it looks as though they are too close to the property line as well. And, it's hard for me to tell exactly on Google Earth, but there likely is a lot of buildings in that area that are too close to the property lines. And it was, things weren't done quite the way we were doing them now. But maybe to me, we have to move forward. We can't go backwards. I think it's minor in nature and I'm willing to support it.
Councillor McDonnell, you had a comment?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I guess I'll side here with Councillor Lang. I mean, there's not much we can do, and I have to admit, at this point in time, had this construction been going on today, and it had been brought to our attention, or our staff wouldn't have had an error at the time, and they would have identified the fact that the building was being built too close. This same process would have happened, and I can't speak for a committee of the day at that point, but I can't see at any point where if a foundation was started that a setback would have been denied. At this point, I know sitting on this committee for 4 years, I'm yet to see, I've seen many side yard setbacks reduced, and a lot of them to less than this. So I personally, I don't see an issue with it at this point. I think there is an issue, a civil issue here. And I mean, maybe it'd be nice for the property owner to reach out to Ms. Desjardins, and maybe there could be a civil discussion there to find a solution to that issue. But the black and white side to it with the minor variance, it's a very minor issue at this point. So, thank you.
Councillor Jaworski.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Just quickly, I do want to acknowledge Mrs. Desjardins' concerns, because it does sound like there had been a breakdown of the process in the past where there was an error, and that error, it should not have happened. And unfortunately, at this time, I don't really see a way that we could deal with that at this point. But it does sound like our process is now improved. It does sound like we have a tighter process in terms of ensuring that this should not occur again. However, when it comes to what we're dealing with today in terms of severing these properties, I think the severance is minor, and I don't see how it's going to exacerbate the error that did occur previously. So based on that, I'm willing to support the severance application.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions of the public? I have two other members attending. Seeing none, can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Sam McDonnell, seconded by Martin Lang to approve the application as presented. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. Item number 6, next meeting, November 15th at 6:30 p.m. Ms. Haley.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So far, I have one application to process, and the deadline is tomorrow at noon. So I suspect we will still only have the one for the next meeting.
Alrighty, thank you very much. And adjournment at 6:53 p.m. Moved by Sam McDonnell, second by Stephanie Jaworski. All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you all. See you in a few minutes at our regular council meeting.